Hello and welcome to another episode of the Auto Supply Chain Profits podcast. We've got Kevin Piotrowski on the show today. Kevin is the Chief Transformation Officer for AIAG, and we are going to talk about a tool that AIAG is launching. This is a very successful and exciting launch time that we're in right now to do exactly that. And it is called Catena-X. And I am sure that our audience has heard the name and they're probably thinking, what is this thing? Kevin Piotrowski, first of all, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Jan, and fantastic to be here. Super excited to talk about this topic with the audience today.
Kevin, keep it simple. What is Catena-X?
That's always the $100,000 question. And at a high level, Catena-X is a way for companies, automotive companies, but in general, manufacturing companies, to move data across their supply chain, both up and down. So the term radical collaboration comes into play because it is not just a point-to-point connection, but it goes through, up and down the supply chain. So, and this is for complex data, Jan, not standard data. So data around product carbon footprint, data around the battery passport, data around the digital twin, and it moves in a secure, encrypted way. And it's the data that the supplier and the customer, they decide what data, who gets to see it, what's the sharing of that data. So it's very well controlled as well.
Wow, you mean to tell me, referring back to my tier one supply chain background, so no longer do I have to run around to multiple different sources and waste all kinds of time figuring out, first of all, where is the data? How do I get my hands on it? It's probably in 15 different formats. I no longer have to waste time doing that. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, that's really the point of this. It's a standard way, it's a common way to share this data. And if you think back to the way data was shared way back when, right, it was a fax machine. It was very linear. Then we moved into electronic data interchange and application interfaces and a variety of XMLs and things. That data moved point to point. So a supplier sent something to their customer, they received that data and processed it. Today, when you mention speed and collaboration and transparency, some of these other data sets like product carbon footprint or battery passport, this data needs to move not just from one location to another, but throughout the supply chain, down many levels, up many levels. And it has to move quickly.
You know, one thing yesterday that Jenny Smith talked to me about after the conference, and it's a really great idea. She's a tier 2. And so she has a lot of resin suppliers. They deal in plastic. And she said, you know, Terry, at the bottom of the supply chain, they are probably getting hit up with thousands of assessments because, let's face it, plastics and everything, right? Steels and everything,
absolutely.
Right? That raw material. So she said if there's a way we could even help them so that they just get the assessment one time or get the survey so they're not getting it, you know, thousands of times from everybody. So could that be a potential in the future with Catena-X that we could really streamline surveys and things like that throughout the industry?
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the primary targets when you think about tariffs or traceability or quality or, you know, deforestation regulations and compliance. All the customers are requiring this information. And there's one primary source or one field that's, I would say, really important. It's country of origin, right? So this is common across all of them. So as this gets standardized, as this gets what I would say more common, you're going to see a top-down approach where customers are requiring this information from their suppliers and their supply chain, more importantly, not just the one below them, but all the way through the supply chain. But you're also going to see this start to bubble up, like what I would say a cell phone was 15, 20 years ago when companies would put their, you know, we have coverage in these areas, because you're going to have suppliers saying, wow, I'm doing it this common way for 5 of my customers, and I would really like my other 5 to do it the same way. And that's why it fits so well with AIG, because we're all about commonization, we're all about standards, we're all about doing it one way and not trying to have a high burden on the supply chain. And these use cases in Catena-X go straight across our 3 most important pillars: quality, supply chain, and sustainability/corporate responsibility.
Hey, Kevin, can you illuminate a use case? I'm sure you went right to the point I was going to bring up about use cases. I'm sure our audience is kind of dying to know how powerful Catena-X could be, number one, but is already. So let's talk about a few use cases that are kind of practical examples just for our audience today.
We had the benefit of having one of our OEMs and one of our top suppliers at a couple events here in the last month where they actually demonstrated this use case on stage. One of them is around product carbon footprint and getting product carbon footprint data from your supply chain. And by leveraging Catena-X and being able to leverage primary data versus average secondary data, that's more of an average, not an exact amount, they were able to report 46% less carbon emissions from just one example. And that wasn't because there was something wrong with the prior calculation. It was just using accurate real-time data in the supply chain. And one other example we have for the whole audience is around quality. Everybody is very concerned about, and that's the most headline news there is when there's a quality recall by any OEM. How do you contain, how do you track where all those parts are? That takes time, right? So when a defect is found, all of a sudden you have to look how many vehicles are at dealers, how many vehicles are on the assembly line, and start working your way backwards through the supply chain, which takes a lot of time, a lot of manual effort, and typically results in a recall that's much larger because you don't want to make any mistakes. With Catena-X and leveraging it for quality, you can blow through the supply chain and get information back up, greatly containing that issue. And then when you throw AI in and you throw other things down the road, it'll work from being not only helping contain, but helping be more predictive and then ultimately preventing these types of recalls.
It's fascinating that you say quality. I was just reading a survey the other day, and they were saying AI and quality is one of the top things in manufacturing, so that's so exciting. But the other thing, Kevin, I want to ask you is, I know people out there with EDI. Is this going to impact EDI, not impact complementary? What do you think there?
No, that's a great question, and that's one of the more common questions because I think everyone's like, wow, is this replacing something? And the answer is no. EDI has been around for a long time. I happen to date myself because I was part of the EDI work group and the barcode labeling work group in the mid-'80s.
We met there.
We probably did, right? It started working on the first ASN that was ever done via electronically versus a fax machine. So, no, EDI still has a place, right? EDI is really strong and really good at point-to-point and EDI communications, and then EDI is really good when you want to receive the data and put it into your system. So as an example, a supplier wants to send an ASN, they're going to do it via EDI. That ASN data, that shipment data goes into the customer's, receiving system and updates their inventories and gets put into their, ERP. So those use cases that are perfect for EDI. For Catena-X, it's more the complex data where you really want to see not move data from one point to another and then be done as a one-time thing, but where you want to move data up and down the supply chain and not to store or save the data, but just to have visibility. That's the key of where the issues are or what the data is without storing it. And that's the beauty of Catena-X, and be able to do that very quickly.
I think, Kevin, what I'm hearing and what I think people need to understand, it's not necessarily point-to-point, one-to-one relationships, right? It's one-to-many. It's multi-tier.
It's many-to-many.
Can you explain that, maybe expound upon that just a little bit more and kind of explain what that means in terms of the design of the interaction?
Say you want to understand your product carbon footprint for your vehicle. You need data from all the information prior to that, from all the tiers, all the way throughout the supply chain. So it's not just getting data from the tier 1, but it's making sure you have data from the tier 2, the tier 3, the tier 4, and so on. But to do that, some of that data is proprietary. So this with Catena-X is very encrypted, it's cyber secure, but it's also protecting the information that's what I would call IP, critical IP for the companies other than their tier 1. So if I'm an OEM, I can see my tier 1's data. I get to see the results of the data from the supply chain below them, but I don't get to know the details. And that's the beauty of the encrypted data.
Kevin, let's talk about data for a minute. Supply chains have gotten far more complex than they used to be. There's a ton of data out there, right? Massive amounts of data. What impact does Catena-X have on supply chain data?
That's a super good point, Jim, because supply chains over the last 20, 30 years really have changed a lot. And there's some key things that I think impact data. So one, long ago, you had a handful of customers and they were local, and most suppliers were within a 100-mile radius of the facility. Then to be successful, companies knew they had to get global, they had to get more customers, and they had to have a global supply chain. So their business suddenly became more complex. Many business requirements from different customers, plus how do you deal in a multinational environment when you were maybe a smaller mid-sized company. So that was kind of the first start of it. All of these enterprises, though, have mountains of data within their enterprise, both inside the four walls, but also outside with their partners, their suppliers, and all those types of things. So the way data now gets managed is become critically important. The supply chain, used to be, hey, if your supply chain is flexible, if it's lean, if it's fast, if it's nimble, that brings more value to you as a company, whether you're public or private, right? It's more important. Well, now all that still applies, but how you leverage the data and how you manage your data and how you drive data down in the organization to the right people to make decisions will impact your business and your bottom line. Having access to data is really knowledge, and getting the data quickly, not waiting weeks, months, or through a very manual process, doesn't work anymore. That will lower the value of your supply chain. So not only do supply chains have to be lean, fast, nimble, quick, they've got to be able to share and have transparent data throughout their ecosystems. So that's, I think, a big difference that didn't exist even 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think I just lost 20 years of my life because thinking about all the years that I spent chasing data and putting data together. So I'm thrilled that the future generation no longer has to do that, Kevin.
Absolutely, yep. And the companies that do it better are going to be far more successful than the companies that don't.
So, Kevin, one thing I have a question on, and I'm sure, being an ERP provider, whether you're any kind of provider in technology, we're going to get reached out to by our customers as they get asked to do this. QED, how can you help me? Or whoever the vendor might be. So for vendors like QED, where can I tell our tech people to go to understand, learn about this, so we get ahead of the customer starting to ping in to us to say, hey, what are you going to do to support us?
You're absolutely right. And we're working really closely with a lot of now solution providers. Many new solution providers have joined AIAG because of Catena-X, because they want to be part of this ecosystem. We're in essence a powerhouse hub, I should say, for Catena-X because of our almost 5,000 members, and we represent those members, help get the priorities. But for solution providers like yourselves, you will be wanting to get your solution certified on Catena-X for your customers. And so like the example that we did, and it's public information, we had Ford on stage with product carbon footprint. We had Flex, which is a tier 1 supplier, and they use a different software provider. And we had Micron, who's a chip maker, and they use a different supplier. But all were leveraging the Catena-X network to communicate this information. So the solution providers play a super key role in this. It's really an ecosystem, OEMs, suppliers, and solution providers that are going to help make this be valuable for the supply chain.
Since you mentioned Europe, I'm assuming it's global?
Yes, this is a global standard that everybody is trying to get on board with.
Kevin, I can imagine there's a lot of suppliers out there right now, and they're rolling their eyes and they're going, oh, no, not another system. But this is different. But tell us why. Why should suppliers get engaged in this?
I think the key is there, Jan, and you're right. It is something additional, but there's a lot of values to be had. There's a lot of benefits from enhanced collaboration, improved efficiencies, data security, integrity, data sovereignty, and also innovation. And a lot of these attributes are new, right? These attributes didn't exist 10, 20 years ago. These aren't attributes that people, when they share data, had to worry about. So we're inviting folks, hey, come to AIG, be part of this ecosystem, start learning about Catena-X, start working on helping us drive for North America the standards, the best practices. We'll help with awareness. We'll help with education. We'll eventually help with very formal training, right, for these folks. We're working already on a number of collaborative pilots with a variety of OEMs, a variety of suppliers, and a variety of software providers. And hey, be part of this ongoing engagement. This is exciting. This is new. There's going to be some ups. There's going to be some downs, but people need to stay the course because with new technology, you always have ups and downs. You don't want to get too high. You don't want to get too low.
When you say get engaged, I think we're going to do something here today that we've never done before. And I'm going to put a call out there to our audience and say this. So now you have an idea of what Catena-X is all about. What questions do you have to our audience? What would you like to know? Because this is the first of several episodes that we'll produce on the subject of Catena-X. But tell us, what is it that you want to know? So send your requests, please, to me directly, Jan, Jan, at gravitasdetroit.com. I will put them together, we will review them, and we'll bring in the relevant experts and we will answer your questions. So please do that. We want to provide content that serves you, that helps you. Understand Catena-X is just one part of it, but it is critical as we move our entire auto industry forward. We love the idea that AIAG is indeed uniting minds and elevating standards. This is it. I mean, this is almost like the North Star for us, right, for the future. So I am very excited to be taking this to the next level. So Kevin Piotrowski, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.